Hello everyone, welcome to Tommy's Station. This week's video is called Back to the Future, Tommy's Back to the Future, because I want to go back to the days when the pioneers were building some amazing steam locomotives. This wagon was made by George Stephenson in 1825, and it was the world's first passenger coach. From what I can gather, it was pulled by a horse on a railway line. So I made this from card just as a project. It's actually called George Stephenson's Experiment. It's a very unusual wagon in that it's very, very narrow. The wheels would be approximately 4 foot from the inner flanges, in between the inner flanges, the railway gauge being 4 foot 8.5 inches. So the actual body was built in between the wheels, so you can imagine there wasn't a lot of room inside. I believe it was approximately 10 foot long by about 7 foot to 8 foot tall, and again very, very narrow. Right, so let's move on now. This is a locomotive I made. I called it Locket because I made it during the lockdown in 2021. This is made from bits and pieces from my junk box. It's based very, very loosely on a George Stephenson's loco called Locomotive and Puffing Billy. He made two. It's not a copy, it's just my version of something that would have been made during those days. So we'll set this one off, I hope. There we go. So as you can see, the cylinders and crank movements. We'll just get it to go a little bit quicker. So it's quite I like the action. So obviously you've got some valve timing there as well. And if you notice the carriage, the first one, when they first started putting passengers in these locomotives, or being pulled by the locomotive, sorry, they were using converted coal wagons, because basically these locomotives were designed for hauling coal. In fact, some of the early ones were made for the coal mines in Wales. So what I've done, I've just tried to recreate what would be my version of an early passenger wagon. And then behind it is obviously an enclosed wagon, which has nothing to do really with the period. It's just something I made to show an enclosed version. So what I'll do, I'll stop this one here. No, I won't. I'll let it run around. So you can see the motion there. Obviously 2 cylinders. And then we've got the crew there in their period costumes, shoveling coal, and the driver there controlling the steam pressures and regulator. Actually runs quite well. Like I say, I was completely bored, and I was looking through some books on old locomotives, and I thought it gave me an idea to make my own. That's what I'll do. I'll just drop it down the camera down here and then bring this to a slow stop. There we go. So there you can see the crank in operation. So I've given it some brass detailing, and there's some passengers standing up. No seats in those days, but here they do have some total luxury. There's an enclosed wagon. Right, so so the next loco is my version of the famous rocket. This was actually made by George Stephenson's son, Robert, and it was designed for the Rainhill trials, where a prize of £500 was offered for a locomotive that could complete a course in a certain time, pulling a certain weight. And Rocket was the most successful of all the entries. I'll give you an idea. You had one called Cyclopede, which was a horse walking on a conveyor, and through the conveyor actually powered the wheels. Amazing idea. Then you had Perseverance. That was a very, very strange locomotive in design. And then Sans Parel was a locomotive that worked fairly well, but not anything like Rocket. And in fact, the coal was fed from the front, so you had a trolley in front of the locomotive, and the stoker, or the coal fireman, he was pushed around and had to shovel the coal in through the front. Very, very strange idea. So anyway, Rocket was capable of a speed of 30 miles an hour. The prize was £500, which Robert Stephenson won. So when you look at the cylinders, I'll just set it off, you can see the position of the cylinders. They're not quite so vertical on this, for the simple reason, when I read more about the Rocket, they later changed the design of the cylinders to be more horizontal. They found that when the cylinders were vertical, it would cause the locomotive to rock, so they changed them, changed position. So the locomotive that's in the museum, the Science Museum, has this type of cylinder arrangement. This again, made from bits and pieces from my junk box. Very, very nice runner. And again, what I've done, I've made some period wagons with people that actually, some of them are sitting down, some are standing. So again, this was a very, very early form of passenger wagon. I hate to think what it was like when it rained. It must have been terrible. So we're bringing it into the station to stop it. There we go, nice slow motion. There we go. So the locomotive behind it is my homemade Lion. So we'll get that one hopefully running in the right direction. Yes. I'll give you a brief history on Lion. I'll just pick the speed up a touch more. Right, Lion was made for the LMR railway. It was built by Todd Kitson and Laird in 1838, It was capable of 40 miles an hour and could pull 200 tons. So quite an impressive locomotive. Now if you look at the dates, when Rocket was built in 1829 and this one was 1838, there's a huge improvement in the designs of the power systems, the pistons and drives. Yeah, so yeah, this was sold in 1859 for £400 to the Mersey docks. Then in 1874 it was used as a pumping engine for 1 year. Then it was just basically abandoned, and then in 1923 it was rescued and it was restored in 1930. So it's good that this part of history still remains. It had a sister called Tiger. The LMR ordered a total of 6 locomotives, but I believe there were differences. Lion and Tiger were sister engines. So it's not an exact copy, but it's the closest that I could make with the bits and pieces I had at hand. This colour scheme I've taken from the film The Titfield Thunderbolt, because apparently they repainted the loco because Technicolor had just been introduced into films in 1953, the year I was born. So can you imagine, this locomotive in the film actually ran under its own steam, and it was limited to 15 miles an hour, I believe. So there we go. There's and in the film the original locomotive was sabotaged, so the local people took this one out of the museum, and then there was a guy called Dan who lived in this old railway carriage in a field, and the village people uprooted his home, put it on a low loader, and with the original brake van managed to maintain a railway service. So that's what the film's all about. It's about people who are passionate about keeping their local railway working. So quite happy how this one works. Slow it down a touch. Yeah, so like I say, this is just my version of a locomotive that actually existed. This was known as the haystack boiler, if you look at the shape of it. Now then, if I can, all these locomotives have one thing in common. I'll just pan down. They're all powered by this type of motor. This is what's known as a Type 7, used by Hornby in many of their locos. I bought, I think it was 5, to replace the motors that were bad in my Hunslet and Pug. So there we go. There's a brief history of steam engines from the 1800s. Amazing engineering for its time. Okay, so thank you for watching. Bye now.